99% of what we're going over is going to apply perfectly. But if you're on Resolve 21 or something, probably not a big deal. Another thing to mention is that I am using the studio version of Resolve, but everything that I'm going to show you is in the free version, okay? So don't be asking me in the comments, is this all in the free version? Do you even listen? So when you open Resolve, this is the first thing that comes up. Now this panel right here, this is called your project manager. This is how you navigate to your different project files. You can see I have some of these older projects here. Yours might look more like this, and that's totally fine. But here is where we open past projects and make new projects. And all of the projects here, these live in our project library. We can browse our project libraries over here. And by default, you'll be working on your local libraries. Now, what the heck does that mean? So a library is just a database of your projects that lives on your system. It's basically just a folder that has your projects in it. Resolve is kind of picky about where that folder goes. It always wants to have access to just that folder. You can't just put projects willy-nilly all over the landscape. So by default, it's probably on your system drive. You can hit this little I and then click on Open File Location. And so for me, it's under C, Users, KC Documents, Resolve Disk Library. And if you go through a whole bunch of subfolders, you'll find all of your projects. Now, I wouldn't worry about this too much. Here's why. The only time you're going to need to open up a project is in Resolve, and Resolve knows where that is. If you want to save a project that's not in that library, maybe you want to save it and give it to somebody else, or you want to save it as a backup or something like this, all you have to do is right-click on your project and go down to Export Project. That will let you save a copy of your project to your desktop or to an external drive or to cloud storage or whatever you want to do. That's going to make a DRP file. That's short for DaVinci Resolve Project. This is a great way to do things, but just know by default, all of your projects live in your library, which is a folder that Resolve knows about on your system. You can have multiple libraries and multiple folders. We'll get into that some other time. Now, you also have network libraries and cloud libraries. A network library is for a studio that has kind of a server and all of that stuff. You probably don't need to worry about that. Cloud libraries are shared projects. These are projects that you can actually share with other editors that have access to your cloud account. And so just like we have this folder on our local library on our system, we can have a folder that lives on the Blackmagic website, basically, that you can all kind of share and access. And it's really slick. If you want a video about that, let me know and we'll talk more about it. But for now, all we really have to do is go down here to where it says New Project, and let's make a new project. And we're going to call this Intro to Resolve. Like this. And we'll just say 2025, because that's the year that I'm recording this. And it's going to ask you for a media location. For now, let's just not worry about that. Let's just leave it at default and hit Create. Once you do that, it's going to open up the Resolve interface. This is where we actually have to start doing things. But first, a little tour. Most of this interface, like everything within the red box, is actually going to switch out depending on what page you're on in Resolve. Here we have the pages. And as I click on the different pages, that's going to switch out my interface. And kind of like we were talking about earlier, it switches it to kind of like a different app, but it's not a different app. This is all Resolve, and it all kind of shares the same project, which is really slick. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But that's the first thing I want you to do is go down here and just switch these pages and get used to switching out that interface. But where we're going to start is this far left page, the media page. All the way over here, click on media for me. And now all of our panels have switched out for the panels for the media page. Now, something to mention here is that this isn't just switching a layout. This is actually switching into kind of a different mode. Even though there are common panels in between the pages, it's not just a different workspace. It's actually like a different mode of creating. So let's start talking about what the heck the media page is. Well, each page has a specific job. The media page's job is to manage media. And so this is a perfect mode to put Resolve in when you don't have any media in your project and you're looking to put some in there. So a little tour of the interface. In the upper left, we have this panel, which is our media storage panel. This is a way to navigate on your system to any media that you want to bring into Resolve. So I'll just navigate to some media here. And once you find the folder up here, then you can actually preview the media just by mousing over any of these thumbnails. This is what we call hover scrub, because you hover over this thumbnail and it scrubs the video. That means it just moves that playhead back and forth so you can see what's going on. This is a great way to be able to preview the footage that you have before you bring it into your project. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, even though we're looking at this media here, the media isn't actually imported into the project. We haven't told Resolve to use the media. We're really just kind of using Resolve to go and find it. But we haven't said anything about wanting to edit anything or combine clips together or change them. So in order to change anything or work with this media, we need to import it into Resolve. To do that, real simply, we can just grab a piece of media here from our media storage and drag it down to this panel down here, which is called our media pool. It's going to ask if we want to change the project frame rate. We'll explain this a little bit later. I'll hit change right now. Okay. What that's going to do is put this piece of media down here in the media pool. Anything that's down here in the media pool actually lives in our project. So we've told Resolve that, hey, there is a piece of media called A0054191 blah, 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 and it lives on our system. Here it is. I want to actually work on this. And so we've told Resolve that we're actually going to use this and play with it and work with it and edit it with other videos and all the fun stuff that Resolve does. All the media up here in this panel is not in our project yet. It's just on our system. So as far as Resolve is concerned, it only really knows about this one clip. In fact, I would consider using this panel a little bit optional. It is a nice way to be able to hover scrub and kind of find the media that you want, but you could also just close this media storage and bring things directly into the media pool. You could do that a couple ways. You could right click here and say import media. You could go up to file and go down to import media, or you can just drag media into the media pool from your system. And so here I have a bunch of footage. I can grab any of these and just drag them into the media pool. And again, now it knows about this footage because I put it in the media pool. It lives in the project. So now we have two clips that we can work with. What if we had a bunch of clips? So I'll just grab a bunch of this and drag this in here. Now we have a bunch of clips here in the media pool. We have all these clips that we can work with for our movie, but it would actually help to start getting organized here. That's one thing that the media page is really good for, and especially working here in the media pool. You can right click anywhere here in this empty space, and you could go up and say new bin. That makes a little folder inside of the Resolve project where you can put different pieces of media. So we can put whatever piece of media we want here, just anything with the girl, let's say. Great. We can just say girl, sure. You can double click and open this and we have our media here. We also have a list of bins over here on the left, which we can kind of navigate to. And it's kind of a little folder structure here. And so if we have another bin here, we could say wide shots, sure. Let's pick all the wide shots here and put them in wide. Sure. And now we have these different bins here. We can organize this. We could also right click here in the bin list and say new bin. That works too. Bin 3, sure. And we can put those into bin 3. We can also drag them like this. There are different views in the media pool. You can zoom these thumbnails in and out with this slider. You can switch it to list view if you want to see a little bit more information about your clips. You can switch this to metadata view, which is kind of a mix of the thumbnail view and there's also a little bit more data on them. Most of the time I either use the thumbnail view or the list view. And this is really how we get organized when it comes to our media here in Resolve, all about the media pool. So I'm actually going to get rid of all of these just so we have no clips here. And I want you to do this with me. If you downloaded the media to follow along, you should have a folder called drag these folders into media pool bin list. Now, this is going to be absolutely shocking, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to select all of these folders and I want you to drag them into the media pool bin list right here, just like this, right under here where it says master, and drop them. That's going to take Resolve a second, and then it's going to make bins out of each of those folders. So that's going to be organized just like it is in our Finder or Explorer window in these different folders. If you drag these into the media pool itself and not the bin list, it's just going to throw all of the media in there without the folders. So make sure to drag them here. All right. So now we have all of the media that we're going to use for the rest of this video. And feel free to open up the bins, go through it and take a look at some of this footage. We have all kinds of fun stuff. We have a production meeting here with multiple cameras. We have footage that we're going to color grade later. We have footage that needs some compositing and some effects. And we have some clips that we're going to edit together into a story in the edit page. Now, I don't want to spend tons and tons of time on this, but I do want to show you a couple little extra things about the media pool. One thing that can be really helpful in the media page is the metadata. Now, over here, we have a metadata panel, which says nothing to inspect right now. But if I select a clip, that's going to show us metadata on this clip. Now, what is that? It's just basically information that is recorded with the clip. We can make this panel bigger by going up here and clicking where it says audio. That's going to close our audio panel here. In fact, any panel in Resolve pretty much has some kind of header like this, usually at the top. And when it's bright white, that panel is open. And when it's gray, it's closed. And so this is how we can open and close different panels in Resolve. And this is common to all of the pages. We're going to be doing a lot of that. So we have our metadata panel open here. And I can see all kinds of information about this, but there's actually even more information. If I go up here to the upper right, this little button right here, I can click this and say all groups. And that gives us just a ton of stuff. Most of this is stuff that we can fill in later. And so if you're the kind of person that really likes to be organized and really, you write notes about stuff and you tag things and you have labels all over your house and you have spreadsheets, this is the best place for you. You can write all kinds of notes about every single thing that you want for your piece of media here. You can write a description, comments, the shot, scene, take, angle, all of this stuff you can do right here in the metadata panel of the media page. It's probably way more detailed than you ever really need to be. But here's what's really cool about that. Let's select this clip 24. I'm just going to double click on this clip 24 here. That'll load it up in this viewer. So if I double click on it, then I don't have to be hover scrubbing it. I can just scrub this up here in the viewer. And what I can do is zoom in by just rolling with the scroll wheel here to this slate. This is the reason why we shoot with slates, is because then we can easily tell what scene and take a clip is. And we could, if we wanted to, go here into the metadata and kind of record that. So scene 4.5, take 5. So now we have that here in the metadata because we kind of read it off of here and just typed it in. We can do the same thing for other clips here. Let's find it. So this is 4.6, 4.6, take 2, 4.7, take 3. And you could go through and tag all of your clips with this. What's neat about this is I can switch this to list view and I can right click up here in this header and I can pick any kind of metadata that I want to show. In fact, I'll uncheck a bunch of this stuff because I don't care about most of it. Just uncheck all the stuff I don't care about and then just check the stuff I do care about. So for instance, scene, take, and then I can organize this by scene and take. And I can quickly see where my scenes and takes are, match that up to my script if I want to, whatever I want to do here. And so this is a really nice way to get organized. I could also right click here and select keyword. And here I could do something like, all right, this is an over the shoulder shot. So we could go into keywords here in my metadata and type OTS, that's short for over the shoulder, just like that. And that's going to add that keyword here. And anything that I have that's an over the shoulder shot, I can just kind of page through here and see if there's anything else that's an OTS. This is sort of an over the shoulder shot. Sure, let's call it that. OTS, like that. Boop. Now we have these listed as OTS. So I could sort them by keyword, but I can also go to something called a smart bin. Smart bins are like a live filter. It's sort of like a folder that it puts a copy of things into based on whatever you set the smart bin to. And by default, if you click on keywords, it makes a smart bin for every keyword. So I can click on OTS and that's going to show me just the OTS shots. And you can make keywords for absolutely anything you want. It can be completely custom, which is really neat. There's also these collections here, which will give you some quick things to sort by. For instance, video clips, audio only, and it even has a way with AI where it can kind of sort and categorize things. In fact, let's do that. Let's grab our audio only stuff. Let's just grab all of this here. I'm going to just shift click the end of that, right click, and go down to AI tools, audio classification, analyze. This is something that's only available in the paid version. I promised I'd tell you when there's paid version stuff. Any kind of AI stuff is pretty much in the paid version. All right. But what's neat about this is once it analyzes all of that, then I can go and look for clips just with dialogue, clips with just music, clips that are more for effects. And there's also subcategories, and it will try and figure out clips that have things like effects in them, things like a door, things like a dog barking, things like laughter or liquid. Sometimes it does all kinds of weird things, like it thinks there's sheep or pig. There's a toilet flushing sound. It nailed that one. And so that's kind of fun. If you have lots and lots of clips that you want to organize a little bit better, you can use that AI to do that. But again, that's in the paid version, and you don't need to do that. You can always make your own keywords and kind of organize this yourself. You can even right click here and say add smart bin. And you can do kind of a live filter based on all kinds of stuff. So media pool properties, you could even do like things from a certain scene. If the scene contains, scene 4, then that's going to only show scene 4. And if we hit create, then we have the smart bin 1, which we could rename scene 4. And you could have one for each scene. All kinds of stuff you can do with this. This is especially helpful for documentaries and things where you have lots and lots and lots of footage that you need to stay organized with. Things where you have, 20 hours of B-roll. It's great to spend some time before you edit to kind of get this all organized here. And there are a few more things that you could do in the media page, but this is really what I use this for most of the time, is going through and getting organized, logging footage, putting metadata in, and just kind of getting our head around all of the media that's in our project. And I'm going to show you one more cool thing before we get into the edit page. And this is something that you can actually do in the other pages, but is a great thing to do in the media page as well. And that is syncing audio. If we open up our clip and play this back, we have the audio from the camera.
3, 2, 1.
The kids are talking, but you can't really hear them very well because the camera is really far away. Now we had a boom mic here where we were recording some audio so that we can actually hear them, but that recorded to a separate recorder. In fact, if we open up our audio here, this clip 108.
Scene 4, shot 18, take 3.
He said, scene 4, shot 18, take 3. Scene 4, shot 18, take 3.
Scene 4, shot 18, take 3.
So how do we get this audio and this video to sync up? Well, you could actually put them together on a timeline, which I'll show you a little bit on how to do something like that later. But one thing that Resolve can do that's really great is we can take this audio. Let's actually just grab all this audio and throw this into that folder. So we have all of the audio and video together. I can take this clip and this clip. I'm just holding Control, selecting both of these, and I can right click and go up to Audio Sync, Auto Sync Audio. This is something that is still available in the free version. And we're going to select Synchronize using Waveform like this and hit Sync. What that's going to do, you just about miss it. What that's going to do is replace the audio in our video clip with the audio from that mic. So here,
Camera, rolling audio.
Scene 4, shot 18, take 3.
that still works, but now
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
we can actually hear them because we have that good audio switched out. What's cool about this is we can actually select all of our clips. I'll just shift select all of this, right click, Audio Sync, Auto Sync Audio, and that's going to go through all of our clips and sync them together. So anything that matches with the other one, it's going to replace that audio. Now, some of the clips it didn't really work for, and that's okay. We can worry about those later, but for most of them, it worked. So it says clip 20 and clip 19. Let's look at clip 20 and clip 19. And there's not really any audio that we need to hear. There's not any dialogue, so it's really not that big of a deal. But from now on in our project, we'll hear the good audio
Fine.
instead of the on-camera audio. And that's going to make editing a lot easier. In fact, if we want to double check and make sure that things are synced up, we can right click here in this header and find synced audio. And that's going to list the audio right here that it's synced up with that clip. Isn't that nice? Such a great feature. Next, let's talk about editing. And for that, I'm going to go into the edit page. I'm actually going to skip over the cut page for just a minute. But to switch to the edit page, all I have to do is click on edit, and that'll switch to the edit page, and we're ready to start working on our story. Now, a lot of what you do in Resolve is going to be in the edit page because you can kind of think of it as like the hub for all of the things that happen in your video. The edit page is where we take all of these clips that we have in our project and we actually put them together in a timeline. The timeline is where we figure out the order of the clips and how long they take and which parts we use. And we're basically building our new edited video with the timeline. It's really all about building a story. And so if we're shooting a scene in a movie about Bill getting into his car, we can shoot all of the different pieces of this. Bill walking to his car, Bill getting in the car, Bill getting a phone call, Bill opening the door, Bill waving to the neighbor. We can shoot all of these things happening in any order we want, and then choose to change the order in our edit. So Bill opens the door. That's the fourth thing that we shoot, but we're going to put it first in our edit. Bill waving to the neighbor comes next. Bill getting a phone call, Bill walking to the car, and then Bill getting in the car. And so even though we shot this out of order, the order that we're building in our edit is Bill opens the door, Bill waves to the neighbor, Bill gets a phone call, Bill walks to his car, Bill gets in the car. This is the kind of thing that I'm so excited about when it comes to editing, is because what we're doing is we're building a story here. So everything in the edit page is about building that story. And that timeline is going to be where everything in our video lives, and we're going to make more tweaks to it later in these other pages. But for now, kind of keep that in mind, that that's our goal with the edit page. So let's talk about the interface. We are going to have some familiar stuff here, actually. We have these little buttons up here. When we click these and they're white, they open up different panels. And the panel that's open by default over here on the left is our media pool. Now this is exactly like the media pool in the media page. The only difference is instead of it being down here, it's over here to the left. But you can still do all the same things. This is all the media that lives in your project. We still have our bins. We still have our smart bins. We can still look at our media in various different ways. But you can sort of think of this as like your cabinet of ingredients that we're going to use to make our video here. We also have a couple of viewers. This left viewer is called our source viewer. And this right viewer here is called the timeline viewer. What the source viewer is for is if I open up one of these pieces of media, double click on it, I can preview this piece of media. So I can scrub through this and preview this and look all through any kind of media that I have. And you do that just by double clicking on any of these pieces of media. And you can sort of think of this as like picking up something and looking at it. So if you have a snack in your cabinet, you pick it up and you look at it like this, but you haven't actually added it to your plate yet. All you're doing is just kind of previewing it, looking at it. So that's cool. You can double click on any piece of media to load it up here in the viewer. You can also switch this to this second mode right here with this little button. And this is called source tape mode. And what this is it basically takes all of your footage and it loads it all into this source viewer all at once. And it just kind of puts them all together. And so if I scrub through this, I'm scrubbing through this first clip. And if I go to this second part after this little tick mark, I'm scrubbing through the second clip and the third clip and so on. And so I can scrub through all of my clips in my media pool, at least in the bin that I have up here, all at once in one motion. This is great if you're looking for a specific shot visually that you want to lay over something. Makes it really, really quick to be able to find what you need to find. But you might find it less confusing, maybe a little bit easier just to use this first icon here, this first mode where you double click on a piece of media and load it up here in the viewer. Now, once we have a piece of media selected that we like, and we actually want to add that to our video, we want to put that into our edit, what we have to do is add it to a timeline. If the media pool is like our cabinet and our viewer is like picking up a ingredient from that cabinet, then the timeline down here, this is kind of like our plate. So if we want to actually eat something, we're going to put it on our plate. So if we want to add this to our video, I can grab this clip just in the middle. I'm just grabbing it and dragging it down here to our timeline. And that's going to add this clip to our timeline, which is like, putting an apple on our plate. So now we have an active timeline. We have this playhead that goes back and forth. And this is actually going to make the story of our video. Right now, our story is this. If we go all the way to the left and I hit spacebar to play, we have a bunch of black space here. We have an empty space, and then eventually our clip starts. And this is our full clip, not edited. We haven't done anything with this. It's just literally the clip thrown into the timeline. We still have people moving around. We still have the slate, all of that kind of stuff. And so if we were going to export this movie right now, and we were going to put this on YouTube or something, this is exactly what people would see, is 6 seconds of black followed by just this unedited footage that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But we've done something really exciting. already. We've put this clip down onto our timeline, which means that we actually have a video in progress now. We could render this out and it will be a video that's different than this clip. So we've done a little bit of magic already. We've created something. Now, it's not very good. It's not very interesting. So we can change that. But all of the magic of building our story happens down here in the timeline. So let's change our story to be a little bit better here. The first thing I want to do is I don't want this black right here. I don't want to watch 6 seconds of black before anything happens. So we can take this and just drag it to the left. And we always want this kind of pushed all the way to the left at the very start of our clip, because then we start with an actual video, right? We can zoom into this timeline by clicking this little plus right here. That's kind of our zoom bar. We can zoom in and out. And I can adjust this middle bar here and I can move this up and down. And by default, we have a video track and an audio track added here. If I take the bottom edge of this audio track and I drag it down, that'll make these waveforms a little bit bigger. And so we can see a visual representation of what's happening in the audio. So the bigger the spike, the louder the audio. So we can see where the slate is right here. We zoom in here, we have these little spikes.
15, take 1.
That's where that slate made that spike. And so we're going to start sometime after this.
What was that?
So her saying, what was that? So that's a good place to start this clip. That's where it actually gets interesting. That's the part that we're supposed to show. And so what we can do is we can trim this and kind of cut out all of this part and just start the clip there. The way that we do that is we just mouse over the edge of this, and you'll see how my mouse kind of turns into this left bracket. I can grab this and then just slide this over like this. And I'll have that clip kind of start right there. This is called trimming a clip. So just like you would trim a hedge or something like that, or trim a piece of paper, you kind of cut off all the excess, right? So we're cutting off this first part. Let's play this back. I'll just hit spacebar.
What was that?
Great. I like that. Let's stop right after that. And I'll take the edge of this and drag this over here. And we can see the outline of the full clip. And we're just going to use that little part. There we go. So now this is a lot shorter, but we have all this black here. So we can take this and slide it all the way to the left, just like that. Okay, I'll zoom in here so we can see what's going on.
What was that?
Great. This, literally what I just showed you, picking a clip here, dragging it down, and then deciding where you want to start that clip. So maybe starting it right here.
Go check it out.
And trimming it to just be that part that you like.
Check it out.
No, you go check it out.
Trimming off all the excess. This is like the bread and butter of editing. This is like 90% of it. You can make so many amazing videos literally with what I just showed you. That's all you need. That's all you need for so much stuff. We're just bringing those clips in, trimming them, and then putting them here in the timeline. And ideally, there wouldn't be any empty spaces in between them. So we cut from one video
Go check it
to the
out.
next video. All right, we're putting these clips together and that makes a new story. Just like in our example of Bill walking to his car, we're taking all these separate clips and then putting them together here in an order that we like in the timeline, okay? And what's cool is that we have control over this. We can do something like completely cut out the phone call. Bill opens the door, Bill waves to his neighbor, Bill walks to his car, Bill gets in the car. We could cut out this whole first part and just say Bill walks to his car and then Bill gets in the car. We are in complete control of this story, and it's all about where these clips go in the timeline and what order they go in. So this is so great. Let's get our hands dirty here a little bit. Let's make a story. So if we were to go to this second icon here, this source tape, and scrub through this, we can kind of get a good idea of the story here. These kids arrive and they see this crashed UFO. They're a little bit scared about it, so they kind of argue who should go check it out. The girl finally convinces her brother to go and check it out, so he walks towards the UFO. So he walks up to the UFO. They're both really nervous. And then as he walks up there, something moves. Whew. So this is just a few clips from a scene from our movie called Tuesday on Earth. And so what's great is we have all these clips and we can choose to tell this story however we want. So a good way to start, oftentimes, is with a wide shot. And we want the wide shot that shows the first thing that happens, right? So we have the kids kind of riding up on their bikes, putting their bikes down. And so let's use that for our first clip. So that's clip 10. I'll just double click on that. That'll switch to our source viewer. I'll grab this and drag this down into our timeline. For this first clip, let's scrub through until we're ready, until something interesting starts happening. So right as they kind of get off their bikes, that's probably a good place to trim this beginning. Move this down. Let's play this back. I can hit Control F to play this full screen like this.
Whoa.
Great, that's about all we need right there. And so we could use that and trim it this way. We also have other takes here. And so let's scrub through this and see how this works. And you'll notice now when we scrub through things, the video changes on the right viewer. That's because, again, this is the timeline viewer. This is the preview of what your actual movie is going to be. This is just picking up footage from over here and looking at it. Nothing that happens over here is necessarily going to happen in your video. It's all about this viewer right here, the timeline viewer. If you forget which one is which, just scrub your timeline and see which one moves. We can scrub through this and figure out what we like for our different takes.
Whoa.
Great, I like that. Let's trim the end and let's trim the beginning right after they start moving.
2, 1, action.
Okay, something like that. And move this all the way to the left. So we have our first shot of our movie, them getting off their bikes and walking up. Let's maybe go back into our source tape here, kind of scroll around and try and figure out what we should do next. Again, we're in control of this. That's what's so nice. So they end this shot by kind of standing there like this. So let's cut to them standing together. I think probably this shot right here, shot 31. But this time, instead of dragging this entire clip down here to the timeline and trimming it, we're going to do a little bit of work before we add it to the timeline. We're going to do that by setting ins and outs. See, in our source viewer, we're viewing the entire clip, right? The whole thing. And everything that might happen in that clip is not necessarily stuff we want to keep. Saying action, the actor having to sneeze, Bill waving to the neighbor, Bill waves to the neighbor again, awkward ending and cut. Most of that stuff we don't need. What we really want is Bill waving to the neighbor, right? So what we can do is kind of trim out the extra stuff in the source viewer before we take this and we put it down into the timeline. And so what we'll do is we'll set what's called an in and an out. An in is like the start of the clip that you want, and the out is the end of the clip you want. You can think of this like swimming. When you get in the pool, you start swimming, and when you end swimming, you get out of the pool. So an in is the beginning of your clip, and out is the end of your clip. So we're going to scrub through and try and find the beginning of our clip, which is probably going to be right before he starts talking. And kind of scrub through this, and then let's just play.
Go check it out.
Great. So yeah, right about there. And we want that to start there, so we're going to set an in. There's a few ways to do that. One of them is you can click this button right here, which is our set in button, like that.
No way, you.
The other thing you could do would be to hit I on the keyboard, I for in.
Go check it out.
Let's play this back and see what it looks like.
No way, you go check it out.
Fine. Okay. I'll go check it out.
Good. Now let's end the clip there, and we can either click this set out button or we can hit O for out, just like that. Now we have these little gray indicators here. And what that means is that our clip is this long, but we're only going to use this part of the clip. This is what we're actually going to use. And if I click and drag from the middle of this clip down here, we'll see it's much shorter than it would have been, and it's already pre-trimmed. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't change it. We can grab this and we can take the edge of this and trim this, and you can see how big the original clip is with this little gray outline that shows up. It's just like we were to put this down and trim it. We just don't have to move things around in the timeline to do that. We could just kind of trim this beforehand and bring this in. And so what some people will do is go through all their footage and pick the part that they like. They'll kind of do some pre-edits. Maybe like this, I for in. And I can also use the J, K, and L keys on the keyboard as these buttons right here. J plays backwards, K starts and stops, and L plays forwards. So you can kind of move things back and forth with J, K, and L.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
Fine. Okay. I'll go check it out.
Good. That looks good. I'll hit O for out. And I've just grabbed the part that I want, and I can drag it down into the timeline, just like that. And so a great way to start getting things here on the timeline is just to go through all of your clips and pick the parts you like.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
Fine.
Reset. We don't want you to move too much.
Right.
Okay. Needs to back up a little bit. So we're going to use the second take. I can scrub through this faster by hitting L twice. That's going to go through this at 2x speed. And then I can hit K to stop, and then L to play back normal speed.
Go check it out. Right.
J to kind of reverse. I for in.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
Fine.
And again, I can just drag this down. So you can do this for all of your footage. And a good way to do this is just kind of throw all the footage into a timeline. And then remember, you can always move things around, change the order, and play around with things. And you can always trim it more or less. You really can't ruin it too badly. And so this is the fun part about editing, is creating this story. So let's just maybe cut to this second shot here. And I'll just trim this back a little bit to where they're kind of just looking dumb at this thing. And we'll cut from this wide shot into this close up like this.
Whoa.
Action.
We got to cut out that action though.
Whoa.
Go check it out.
No way, you go check it out.
Fine. Okay. I'll go check it out.
Great. So we have the basic actions happening where they come up, they see something, they start arguing, and eventually the guy starts walking towards the craft. But we want to show this in a more creative way. And so we actually have these other shots that we can cut in between them and make it look a little bit more interesting. So for instance, when the girl's talking, we want to see the girl's face a little bit closer. So let's see if this take works.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
And I like that little, wait, what? Like this right here. So let's trim that. And let's see if we can put this in there somewhere right after he says, go check it out.
Go check it out.
Right there. That's probably a good place to cut. Now, we haven't done this yet, but we have this clip, and this shouldn't go before or after. It should go right in the middle here. So what we can do is we can split this clip a couple of different ways. One way we could do it would be to go and click on this little icon here, this little razor blade, and that's going to turn our mouse into a razor blade tool. And whenever we click on this clip, that's going to split the clip right there wherever we click. So we can just chop this up if we want to. I'll hit Control Z a few times to undo that. What I like to do is figure out where I want to cut by moving this playhead back and forth, and then use a keyboard shortcut to split it. The default keyboard shortcut for Resolve is Control \. That's the \/ that's right above Enter, like the return key kind of in the middle of the keyboard. If you hit that, that will split this clip right where that playhead is. And then you can move the clips around and put this clip here in between them, like this. So now let's see what this looks like.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
See how that kind of works?
Fine.
Now, we want to see him say fine, and so really this is kind of the same process. So we split it right there, Control \, and we might not use the rest of this, but we'll just bring it down there kind of out of the way for now. Have him saying fine. Let's see, where's another one? There we go, him saying fine.
No, you go check it out.
Right there, I like that. Let's trim that here. Bring this in like this.
Go check it out.
Fine.
Great.
Wait,
So he says fine here.
Fine.
Let's trim this. Put this in order. So now we're putting clips in the order for the story, but we're also choosing clips that show the story the very best. This is where it starts to get really fun.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
Fine. Okay. I'll go check it out.
Great. So we'll maybe cut right there. And now we have a sequence of a few different shots that really start to tell our story. And then it's up to you as the editor to go in and think about, okay, how fast should one clip cut to another clip?
Go check it out.
So he kind of pushes her. I feel like this should happen a little bit quicker. Go to that other shot. Anytime that you cut in between one shot and another, you can decide to show more or less time. And so you can kind of control time a little bit. This is the one part of the world where you can control time. That's what's really neat.
No, you go check it out.
Good. Let's cut that a little bit tighter too. Move this down.
Fine. Okay.
You'll notice how this cut works really well.
Fine.
The reason for that is because he starts to turn his head back in this shot, and he finishes turning his head on this shot. This is called cutting on action. That means that there's one action that happens in one shot that's continued in the other shot. And so our mind accepts the little differences in between the shots, and it makes it feel like they're continuous. Just like I start waving my hand in this shot, and then we cut to this shot, it feels like it's continuous, right? And that's because it is. I mean, this is kind of recorded live, but that's what really helps.
Fine.
Is that little tiny movement. And so looking for those opportunities to make those cuts a little bit easier. For instance, when he pushes her, she kind of moves a little bit. Maybe this happens in this shot too. Does he push her? Yeah, she moves forward a little bit. So maybe as she moves forward just a touch, maybe that'll work a little better. I can select this empty part and hit delete, and that's going to get rid of that gap. See how there's like that little movement. She's moving forward, kind of moving forward a little bit there too. That might be a good cut. It might just take too long and we don't want to do that. We'll see. But that's all up to you. Now, a couple other things about adding clips. Let's go through here and let's add this shot right here, shot 24. This is what we would call their POV, sort of. It's actually an over-the-shoulder shot, but it's what they see. And so anytime that you're editing, especially when somebody's looking off screen and they have some kind of reaction, just like what's happening here, where they're walking towards and they go, whoa, then that sparks a question in the viewer's mind. What are they looking at? And so a lot of the time, it's a good idea to show what they're looking at in the next shot. Now, the next shot in the timeline right here is actually them standing. And it's sort of a problem because they're actually standing farther apart here than they are in this shot. And that's something you'll probably notice. Like, it looks weird. So we can kind of feed two birds with one stone here. We can answer the question, what are they looking at off screen? And we can bridge this gap to not be distracting by adding this shot in here. A couple ways that we could do this would be to zoom out, select all of our shots to the right and move it down so that we have some space to put this shot. And we can drag this shot in here. And we can set the in and the out on this shot and we can drag it in here like that. And then kind of delete the gaps and that would work. What's a little bit faster is to put our playhead right on that edge. You can tell it to snap to the edges by clicking this button right here. If this magnet is white, it'll kind of snap to the edges like this. If it's not, then it won't really snap. You can kind of put this wherever you want. But I like to have snapping on for this kind of thing. Put this right on that edit, that edge in between the two clips. And what we can do is click one of these buttons right here. These are our edit buttons. This one is insert clip. And what we'll do is we can set an in and an out, like the beginning and the end of this clip, something like that. And we can hit this insert button and look what happens. When I click this, it inserts this clip right where that playhead was, and it moves all the other clips this way down the timeline. So if I hit Control Z, we can kind of see what happens. Control Shift Z to redo it. It's just putting that clip in there. So now we have in our story, they show up and say, whoa. And then we see what they see. Ooh, yeah, baby. That looks good. And now we've forgotten how far apart they were in that first shot. And so now we cut here and nobody cares. Works great.
Go check it out.
That's how we build a story here in the edit page. So cool. And this basic process works for any kind of video you're making, whether you're making a film like this or whether you're just doing a YouTube video, documentary, commercial. It's all about finding the clips you want, setting the in and out, and putting it on the timeline in some way. Whether it's dragging it to the timeline or whether it's using an edit button like this insert. There's also a couple other edit modes. For instance, overwrite, which just kind of pastes this over everything. There's replace, which will swap out the clip here for the clip that we're over here in the timeline. And you can click and drag here and drag this viewer onto this viewer, and you have a few more options too. For instance, place on top puts that clip on top and on the next layer. We're always going to be looking at the top layer in our viewer, but we can decide to turn this off and move this around without overwriting this clip. One handy edit button here would be append at end. If you drop it on this append at end, it's going to throw this clip, whatever we have selected here, at the end of our timeline, which is great if you're just kind of gathering the clips that you want. You can just double click, set your in and out, okay? Drag it over here, append at end. You don't have to worry about where you are in your story. You can just kind of go through here, pick the parts you like, append at end. You don't really have to worry about it. Great, append at end. And you can throw those all in the timeline, and then you can move them around and adjust them and trim them and split them and all the stuff that you need to do. So if you want to get really used to how the edit page works, I would highly recommend grabbing this footage, dragging it down into the timeline, and just trying to make a story out of these clips. Now, a couple of quick tips that I think are pretty helpful for actually putting together a story here is I like to use what I call the anchor technique. This is something that we go into a little bit more in our end-to-end editing course, which I'll tell you more about in a little while. But the big idea here is that you start with one shot where multiple things are happening. So we have this wide shot of him walking towards the craft. We have her kind of looking around. And so we can kind of start with this as our anchor for this part of the edit. And then we can use these other shots to enhance it. So we have her kind of looking back and forth right here. We also have this shot of her kind of looking as he walks forward. We have this shot of her looking back and forth right here. And so we can take this shot and we'll just kind of trim this. And we can drag this up to a new track and kind of put this over our shot like this. So we have our wide shot here, and then we have the close up here. And we can kind of move this back and forth without overwriting this just because it's in that top layer. And we can kind of just play around with this until we feel like it works. Maybe we want to cut to a close up of him, which we have right here. Yeah, maybe this one. Sure. And again, we'll just drag that up like this. Maybe we'll just cut to this first and then cut to her. So we have him walking forward. And we can kind of mix these in however we want to make this scene not only have all of the actions that happen in the scene, but also make it look exciting and have a bunch of dynamic shots, right? And we can choose whether to use shots or not. I mean, we have this shot right here, which I really like. Her kind of thinking things over a little bit.
Check it out.
We could decide to put this right here if we want to. But we're using the shots that are already here down in the timeline to figure out where to put our other shots. So that's the anchor technique. Now for a couple of shortcuts. These are really, really important. Let's go ahead and put this right here. And let's say I want to trim this about this much. I can do that with my normal selection mode, my normal tool here, which is activated right here in the toolbar. Or I can use the trim mode. That's this one right here. And what this does is it does similar things, but if I grab the edge like this and I bring it this way, it actually kind of sucks the clips down. And so I can grab the edge here and I can trim this, but it doesn't leave a gap. And so it's just a little bit quicker way to trim things. It's the exact same thing as trimming this with our normal selection mode, selecting this emptiness and moving it down like that. It just does this all in one little thing. The other thing this tool will do, this trim tool, is If you click and drag in the middle of a clip towards the top, what this will do is slip this clip. And that means that it's going to keep the same in and out, but it's going to use a different part of the clip. And so if I want to move it down like this and use this part,
Just what happened?
then that works. I can also slide the clip if I click and drag in the middle towards kind of the bottom of the clip like this. And that moves this back and forth, and it kind of trims the other clips around it. And this makes more sense if we have these all on one line. I'll just drop these in real quick. If I'm in the trim mode here and I grab this lower part, I can move this back and forth and it trims the other clips there with it. So I can trim the other clips, or I can move this kind of clip back and forth. And so this is a nice way, if you don't quite have your clip settled in just right, you can use the trim tools to really kind of move things back and forth. And so it really, really helps, especially if you're trying to make an edit just right. And when you grab this and you move it back and forth, it shows this multiple view. And so we have the first frame and the last frame of this clip. Then we have the last frame of this clip and the first frame of this clip. And so you can see all of the transition points all on one view here. So trim tool is really useful, especially if you're trying to edit a little bit quicker. And speaking of editing quicker, keyboard shortcuts are very, very important. You can hit T to select your trim tool and A for your normal selection mode. Remember, A just kind of moves things around like this, overwrites things, but T will do the slip and slide and that kind of thing. You can hit B to go to your blade tool to chop this up however much you want. But again, I would highly recommend learning the keyboard shortcut just to split this at the playhead. Control backslash like that, because that's a nice way to do that. The other major keyboard shortcut I'd highly recommend learning is the ripple trim shortcut. Let's say I want to chop this part of the clip off, either by doing this and then deleting it and moving it down, or I could use the trim tool and move it down like this. Well, I can do that with a keyboard shortcut by aiming my playhead right where I want the clip to start and hitting Control-Shift left bracket. That's going to do all of that all at once. It's just going to trim this and ripple everything down this way. Ripple is the fancy word for moving clips down so that there's no gaps. And so we can ripple trim, Control-Shift left bracket for the beginning. And then if we want to trim the end, Control-Shift right bracket like that. Now, you may notice that both Control backslash and Control-Shift left and right bracket take two hands on the keyboard. And so if you have one hand on the mouse, it's kind of awkward to remove your hand from the mouse and then hit a keyboard shortcut. It's slightly faster actually to probably just grab it with the mouse. And so to actually save time, I'd highly recommend customizing your keyboard shortcuts. So how do you do that? Up here in our DaVinci Resolve menu, we can go down to keyboard customization. And this is a whole big panel dedicated to keyboard shortcuts. And all you have to do is click on whatever modifiers you want and then whatever you would press after that modifier. So Control-Shift left bracket. And this will show you the command. So this is start to playhead. If I click on this, that'll open up start to playhead right here. And if you want, you can change the keyboard shortcut for this. So I have mine set to Q for start to playhead and W for end to playhead. Let me kind of walk you through this because it's kind of annoying. So I'm going to switch back to my DaVinci Resolve shortcuts here. By the way, they have presets for shortcuts that are kind of like Adobe Premiere Pro and Apple Final Cut, Avid, Pro Tools. What I usually do is I set this to DaVinci Resolve and I'll do this. This Control-Shift left bracket, this is start to playhead. If I click on this command right here, that'll bring that up right here. If I click on this little plus, that will make a little box here and I can type whatever keyboard shortcut I want. So start to playhead, I'm going to select as Q. Great. Now it's going to come up and say Q is already assigned to something, which is fine with me because I'm never going to use this view source timeline viewer. You might use it, but I'm not going to. So whatever you assign to it, it's going to tell you if that's already a keyboard shortcut. So I'm just going to say assign. Now, it gives you a little warning here. The reason there's a warning is because neither of these keyboard shortcuts are going to work anymore because one keyboard shortcut is assigned to two things, which you would think it would just do both things, but it actually does neither. So I'm going to go out of here, go back to my just vanilla keyboard here and click on Q. Then it's going to list all the commands that are under Q. So we have start to playhead, which is what I want, and then source timeline view. Let's click on source timeline view here, and let's just get rid of the Q shortcut right there. Great. We're going to do the same thing with W. So let's go ahead and open up W, dynamic trim mode. Let's take that off. Okay. And then we're going to look up Control Shift right bracket, which is end to playhead. Let's make this W. Great. So now we have Q and W set to start and end to playhead. The other thing that I like to do is set this S key to split clip, which is Control / split clips right here. So I'm going to actually set this to S. It's going to say, hey, S is already something. Let's say, okay, assign. Then let's go back to S and take away toggle slip slide. Boom, like that. Now I have Q and W and S, and those are really the only keyboard shortcuts that I change for Resolve. Everything else seems to make pretty good sense to me, but those are the ones that are really nice because I can use 3 fingers to do a lot of editing, and I'll show you the power of that here in just a second. But this looks good. I want to make sure to save this. So I'll go up to these 3 dots and say save as new preset. We'll call this intro shortcuts, hit OK. Great. So now this is saved. I can close this. And now we should be able to hit Q, and that's going to trim the edge. And W, that should trim the edge. And S should split this. So I have 3 fingers that can do a lot of these editing tasks. So check this out, especially if you're editing something where you have a lot of footage or whether you're just trying to cut down maybe a podcast or something like that. You can go through here and just look at the waveforms like this and see when somebody's talking, right? And so you can split it with S, and then you can get rid of this part with a ripple trim to start. So Q, like that. See how this works? S, Q, just like that. And I can do this by just aiming with my playhead and then Q, right? Just like that. And I can trim this whole thing and cut out all of the silence really, really quickly.
No.
Just by looking at the waveforms and trimming it to those waveforms. So that's a great way to cut down things that have a lot of talking and just keep the talking. In fact, that's how my editor, Sam, is cutting this tutorial. Pretty much same thing, Q, W, and S. What I would recommend doing, especially if you haven't edited before, is I would double click on each of these clips, set the in and out for whatever part looks interesting, and drag it down here into the timeline. Add these all to the timeline and then kind of mix them together and put together a story in the edit page. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit and use a timeline that I've already worked on just so I can show you some more cool stuff. And to show you this kind of stuff, I'm going to import a bin. So just like you can open a project or export a project, you can export just a bin or a timeline in Resolve. It's really helpful. I can right click here in the empty space in my media pool and go down to import bin. And I'm going to select a bin that says Casey only. You will not have this bin. Okay. Say it with me. I will not have this bin. This is Casey only. All right. It's not included in the files. This is just for my demo purposes. Okay. So we're going to open, and that's how you import a bin. Inside of this bin, I'm going to have a couple of timelines that are going to help us learn some stuff. I'll just double click on my edit demo thing here. And here we have an edit that I made using this footage here on the edit page. Let's take a look.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Go check it out.
No, you go check it out.
Fine. Okay. Check it out.
What was that?
So it's a cohesive story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The kids show up, drop their bikes. This is what they see. They argue. The guy starts to walk forward. He's nervous. She's nervous. It moves. They kind of panic, and they go in to investigate. Now, a couple of things to point out here about this edit that I made. One clip here has a split, but there's no cut. we're not really cutting to a different clip. It's just split here for essentially no reason. What we can do is we can actually repair this by right-clicking here on this edit point and saying delete through edit. And that's going to make this into one clip, which is going to be helpful later when we're doing color. There's no reason to have a clip split if you're not going to cut to a different clip or severely change that clip. By the way, a great way to move up and down the timeline when you're zoomed in is to click and hold the middle button on your mouse and drag. And what that will do is let you kind of grab this timeline and move it back and forth. And that actually works for just about everything in Resolve. I can move this preview around by clicking and dragging on my middle button, on my scroll wheel button. That's kind of the click and drag and pan sort of shortcut for most things here in Resolve. So I can move this over here, and it doesn't look like we have any more through edits. Oh, wait, there's one. Let's right click on this, delete through edit. There we go. Good. But actually I had this split over here for my audio. And the reason for that is because this audio is really loud. So if we play this back, those are just really loud bike sounds. And so the cool thing about the edit page is not only can you organize your video tracks and kind of change their order and everything, but you can also mess with your audio. And so what we really want to do is take the volume down on this clip. We actually have the volume turned way up here in our edit, but normally there's a little line right here, and you can click and drag this up and down to change the volume of your audio. And so I had this turned way up because I want to hear kind of the quiet parts, but it's way too loud for when the bikes fall down. And so what we can do is just split this right here, and I just want to split the audio. And when I select this, it's going to select both the video track and the audio track. And I can just select the audio by going up here and unlinking this chain link here. And then I can just select the audio and move that separately. I can also hold Alt and click on this track just to select it by itself. But either way, I want to select just the audio, and then I can split it with Control / or whatever you set your keyboard shortcut to. I can just split that right there. And then I can have a separate volume line for this part and this part. And that lets you change the volume of your audio. Now, we don't want there to be a really harsh difference in our audio where the ambient noise is really loud and then it turns it down immediately. See, if I bring this back, we'll have this kind of sound where it turns it down immediately. And so what we might want to do is crossfade this. I can right click on this edit and go down, and I can pick one of these crossfade options. It doesn't really matter. You can pick the 12 frame, let's say. And what that's going to do is crossfade these clips together, which if you have two different clips, it's going to fade out the first clip and then fade in the second clip kind of gradually so that you don't notice a cut there. But when you have the same clip at different volumes, what it essentially does is it kind of just turns down the volume over this amount of time. So it's a lot more gradual and you don't notice that difference. We could do the same thing here. Yeah, that's nice. And I find this is a really nice way to adjust your audio over time. The other way that you can do that, I'll just take this volume line down a little bit. The other way you can do that is hold Alt and click on this line, and that will give you these little control points. And you can move one up and one down, and you can kind of adjust the level of volume over time here. So you can get really detailed with how you want to change your audio in your clip. And so if you have one really loud part, you could just kind of squish that down. So we could do this. I'll just kind of get rid of this and bring that out like this. We could hold Alt and add a couple of control points here. And I can bring this control point down and just bring down that little part. And that's good too. It's really kind of dependent on what you want to do. The reason I tend not to do this so much is because it's kind of a pain to grab these little points and move them around. And it's easy to kind of mess this up or get too many points, or, you know, if I have to move one, then I have to move the other one. And it just kind of is annoying. And so what I'll usually do is just select this audio, turn this clip down, and crossfade these. Because then I can do stuff like roll these edits back and forth. And that's going to change where that adjustment is really easily. It's really up to you. Here, you'll notice this little triangle. This is from bringing this little white handle over. And what this does is this makes a fade, like a fade out. And so anytime that you have a clip where you want it to fade in or out, you can take these little white handles and bring them in, and that's going to adjust a fade. That works for both audio as well as video. We have these little white handles in this video too. And so we have this fade up from black.
Go check it out.
And then fade down, right? So if you're making a movie trailer where you have stuff fade in and out all the time, that's a good way to do it. And oh my gosh, there's so much more to get into with adjusting stuff on the edit page, but we're already gonna have a long enough YouTube video here. So I wanna show you just a couple other things in the edit page before we move on. Let's talk about the inspector. So the inspector is a panel that you can open up over here on the right. And what this is a list of properties for whatever we have selected. Now, this is a universal thing in Resolve. There is some version of an inspector on just about every page. And so this is an essential concept for you to understand. When you select something, this clip has certain properties. And when we have this selected, what it does is it opens up those properties here in the inspector. So we select something and we adjust its details and its properties in the inspector. Now I can hit this little button to expand the inspector so that it's the full height of the screen. And we can see all these different properties. So every clip has a bunch of properties. So I'll select this clip here and we'll just see what these all do. There are tabs up here, and these are different categories of properties. So a clip by default is going to have video and audio tab. And depending on what other fancy things you do, these other tabs might be available. But the video, we start with the transform properties. These are ways that you can move and scale and rotate your video. And these controls, some of them have sliders, which makes sense. You slide this back and forth. And some of them just have numbers, which you can double click in and replace with a number, or you can click and drag left and right on any of these numbers to control it sort of like a slider. You can double click on any of these properties to reset them. You can also hit this little reset button. And so now if we want to zoom in on her face, we can zoom like this, and we can adjust the position to be right there on her face. We can adjust the rotation if we want to. And that's how we would do that for this clip. Now it's only adjusting this clip because this is the clip that we have selected. If we go to this clip, it is unaffected. In fact, if we're over this clip and we're looking at it, we're adjusting the zoom and nothing's happening. That's because we have this clip selected. And so that's loaded into the inspector. And so we zoom this way far up. We go back to this one and it's zoomed in really far, right? So let's go ahead and reset everything in our transform. We also have cropping, where we can crop the image. We can adjust the softness of that crop. This is great if you want to mix kind of one side of one shot and the other side of another shot, something like that. Or if you want to do kind of a picture-in-picture thing, you could do some cropping on your image and then position it down in the corner, something like that. And at that point, if you wanted to put this clip over something else, you could just put this over other clips here in the timeline, and those would be layered like that. You can adjust the composite mode, which is kind of the transparency of things. If I put this image over this image, we could take the opacity down and kind of fade this so it's kind of ghosted over it. We could also change the composite mode to different things like add or multiply and all different kinds of composite modes. This works a lot like an image editing program like Photoshop or something like that. Same kind of idea. And there's just so much more to go over. But basically, if you want to adjust how a clip is treated, its position, its rotation, how it interacts with other clips, the volume of the audio, the pan of the audio, the pitch, there's equalizer, there's all kinds of stuff that we'll get into a little bit more when we talk about Fairlight. But this is where the properties for anything that you have selected lives. Okay, so again, if we want to make this small, we can zoom it out like that just by selecting it and adjusting it in the inspector. One thing that's cool is that we can stabilize clips here right in the edit page. I can just select the clip, go over to stabilization and hit stabilize. And what that's going to do is take out all of the little jitters and everything for the clip. And it works pretty darn well. Works pretty darn well. The stabilization here is excellent. And there are a bunch of different options here for the stabilization, which you can play around with. You'll get various different results, but just know that that's kind of where that happens. We can correct a lens, so you can distort or undistort your lens. Here where it says retime and scaling, these are just kind of the processes for retiming. If you actually want to do a time remap on something, you can right click on it and go up to retime controls, and you can grab the edges like this and make it play back faster or slower. You can even kind of stop in the middle of this clip and click on this little arrow, and that'll bring up a little menu, and you can add a speed point. And what this will do is let you change part of the clip's speed to one value and the other part to another value. So we can go from slow motion into fast motion. This is great for drone shots and punchy edits and things like that. That's how that's done. And when you're done with your speed changes, you can just hit this little X button right here, and it'll give you a little indicator that there's a speed change on it. But the idea that you select something and adjust its properties in the inspector is really, really, really important. Now, sort of related to that is there is a whole section of the edit page called effects. So if I switch to effects, that's going to bring up my effects panel. And this has, I mean, just so much stuff in it. This is where you get a little bit more fancy in the edit page. There are all kinds of tools here, including transitions, which you just grab one of these transitions and put it in between two clips like this. Just drag it in between on this edit. That will make a little transition like that. You can even select this transition and switch to a different transition here in the inspector. Okay. If you go down to open effects, there are all kinds of effects here that you can apply to your shots. So if you want your shot to be blurry, you can grab something like directional blur, drag this on here, and then you select this clip. And because this clip has effects on it, it has a little indicator right here. And it also has the effects tab enabled, where you can find the effect that you applied to it and you can adjust the properties of the effect, right? See why this is so important? Is because anything that happens in this clip, you pretty much adjust here in the inspector. And so we can adjust the blurriness and all of that, all of the controls for this effect right here in the inspector. We can turn the effect on or off, or we can delete it by hitting this garbage can like that. And that's how we would apply any kind of effect you would want to apply to a clip. So sharpen, stylized kind of stuff, like a mirror effect. Do all kinds of cool stuff. Watercolor, that's cool. And the free version of Resolve comes with a lot of effects, and the paid version has a lot more. So there's still quite a bit of effects in the free version, but there's certain more intense effects that only come with the paid version. We've been working with just clips here in the timeline, but in the effects panel, there are also things like titles and generators. So a generator just generates video. So I could grab something like this 4-color gradient, and I can drag this down into the timeline just like I would drag a clip from the media pool into the timeline. So now we have this 4-color gradient. Again, I select it and go up here to the inspector, and I can adjust the colors. So I can make a nice background with that, and there's all kinds of different generators. There's even some really fancy ones that use the power of the fusion page. So I could do this hexagon glow. That thing's pretty crazy. One of my favorites is this honeycomb. There's all kinds of controls here to change how this looks. There's also transitions and all kinds of stuff here. So we can drag this in. This will be kind of some graphics. There we go. And you can select this and adjust your text, you know. Intro, right? That's cool. You can use a custom logo. You can do all kinds of stuff with this. And each effect is slightly different because it's just kind of built for different purposes, right? So this one has different color controls and things to be able to customize this template. Now, if you want to make your own text that's maybe just a little bit less specific, that isn't this kind of specific looking effect, you can go up to titles. And there are kind of two sections of titles here. There are just the normal titles, and then there are fusion titles. Fusion titles are just fancier titles that use the power of the fusion page. We'll get into that in a little bit, how fusion works and all that. But we have some basic stuff here that's actually really great. So for instance, text, if I just grab normal text, I can put this over my 4-color gradient, and I can select the title controls here in the video in the inspector with the text title selected, you know, my title, and I can change the font and the size and the tracking and all of that kind of stuff to design this title to be exactly how I want. And there are quite a bit of controls here to make this look how I want for my project. Let's go and kind of make a title here. I could just take this text and drag this down, and we'll call this Tuesday on Earth. That's the name of the movie. Pick a different font. Let's just say Poppins Black. Push up that tracking a little bit. There we go. It's nice and tasteful. Let's change the color. Maybe make this kind of a slightly kind of teal color, something like that. Great. There we have our title. Now, let's say that we want to animate something. We want to change a property of a clip or a property of this title over time. Here's how we can do that. We have this text, which is actually just generating a video. If I go over here to the inspector, it says title and settings. If I switch to settings, this is going to give us the same transform controls that we have with any of these clips. Pretty much the same transform controls. And so what we can do is change the position of this text just by taking the video that the text generator generates and moving that video around. There are these little diamonds right here. These diamonds are what we call keyframe diamonds. I don't actually know the real name for it, but I call it keyframe diamonds. Because what you do is you click on this diamond and that will set a keyframe. Now, if you don't know what a keyframe is basically a way to tell your software that you want a property to be a certain value at a certain time. So when we click this keyframe diamond, we're telling Resolve that at 49 seconds and 11 frames, so right here on this clip, that we want the position to be at 0, 0. If we move to a different time, so let's move to kind of the start of the clip, we can adjust this position again, and you'll see there's this little tiny greater than indicator, this little arrow. That means that there is a keyframe on this track, and it's that way. And what that also means is that if I change this position right now, that's going to add a new keyframe. You can see that it turned this keyframe red. And what it's going to do is animate in between those two keyframes over time. And so we've just made an animated title. Isn't that cool? Now, is this really the only indicator that something is animated? No. If we go up here to these buttons right here, and we click on this one that looks like some diamonds, we click on that, that's going to open up our keyframes panel for our timeline. And here we have these familiar little diamonds. And we can see the properties that these are animating. So we have a diamond on this track for position X and a diamond on this track for position Y. And then we also have diamonds here for transform, which is kind of like the group of those properties. So I can take this diamond for the transform and I can move this back and forth, and that's going to change where that keyframe is on my track. And so I can take this first keyframe and move this up at the start, and the last keyframe and move this at the end. And throughout the entire length of the clip, it's going to move from down here to up here. If I want this to go faster, I can push these keyframes together because it'll take less time to go from one keyframe to the other, which means whoosh, this goes faster. And so that's generally how you'll animate stuff in Resolve. And really that same kind of way of animating things by setting a keyframe and adjusting the distance between the two keyframes, that's pretty much how you animate anything in most software. In fact, as you use Fusion, keyframes are all over the place. But just know for now that you can animate stuff by using those keyframes and adjusting the distance between them. Now, when something moves and comes to a stop on a video, it actually looks a lot nicer if it kind of slows down before it stops. That is called easing a keyframe. Like you easily just stop, right? You ease into it. And so what we really want to do would be to ease this keyframe, this last keyframe, so that it slows down before it stops. So it doesn't just kind of jerk to a stop like this. It doesn't look good. And so here's how you ease those keyframes. Right now in this version of Resolve, there is another keyframe panel, which I can click, and that will open up here kind of where the media pool and the effects go. And it will give you another graph, just like is down here. But you can click on this little button right here, and that will switch to your curves view. And this will give you a graph of the values over time. And you can select this last keyframe and click on this button right here, which will let you flatten the handles on this keyframe. So you can grab this little handle. Let's just zoom this in a little bit. You can grab this handle and kind of adjust the graph. And so if you grab this handle and kind of push it out like this so it's flat, you have this nice, easy curve as we go into the keyframe. And so as this comes in, it kind of slows down before it stops. Isn't that nice? Comes in fast, slows down before it stops. And so this is the interface that you can use to get really detailed with your keyframes. Now, it's possible that this panel is going to change in the future. I've recommended that they actually put all of this down here because it makes a lot more sense to be able to move this based on our timeline rather than moving things back and forth on this grid where you don't really have any idea of the actual timing of things. And so if you're watching this video in the future and you're like, there is no keyframes panel here, or it looks different or something, just look around. Some of these buttons up here might be down here. We'll see. You should be able to click on this expand button, and that will give you a undocked keyframe editor here. That gives you a really nice interface for working with your keyframes. Again, that button might be down here in the future. Who knows? The keyframes panels, this one and this one, are brand new to Resolve when I'm recording this. So if it's slightly different on your version, that might be a thing. But either way, it should pretty much work the same. You move your keyframes back and forth to change the timing, and you adjust the curve to ease the keyframes. There are similar tools to this in the Fusion page, which we'll go over in a little while, but that's how you animate things here on the edit page. There are so many more things that I want to tell you about the edit page, but we have to move on. This should be plenty to get you started grabbing the footage and putting it into a timeline and creating a story. This is the magic of video editing, is that you're in control of that story. So good. Next, let's jump into the cut page, which is just a little bit of a different angle on the same kind of idea of creating a story in a timeline. So the cut page. The cut page is kind of like the edit page, but it's built for a slightly different application. You can think of the cut page as sort of like a version of the edit page, but designed with one value in mind: speed of editing. Everything in this page is designed to help you edit faster. Now, it has some pretty familiar elements. We have our media pool up here, which works pretty much exactly like the media pool does in the other pages. The only difference is that instead of a bin list, you have a little drop down here, but pretty much the same idea. We have a viewer. You can double click on a clip and you can hover scrub. You can scrub through it here in the source viewer. You can switch to source tape and bring up all of the different clips one after another. You can also switch to the timeline viewer. So there aren't two viewers in the edit page. There's only one that kind of switches out like this. But other than that, it pretty much works the same. We do have an inspector. Same idea, but we also have kind of this slightly different style of inspector, which if you click on this button right here, will bring up a bunch of controls that are the same as the inspector controls, but they're kind of just on a different interface. The idea being that this would be a little bit faster. We also have effects and titles and even a keyframes editor like we do on the edit page. There's transitions, that kind of thing. But really the big difference here in the cut page versus the edit page is that we have two timelines. We have this upper timeline here, and we have the lower timeline down here. Now, this can be a little bit confusing, but these are the same timeline at different zoom levels. So this upper timeline is your entire movie from beginning to end. So it's zoomed all the way out. The lower timeline is the zoomed in version of that same sequence. And so if I want to adjust this part where we have a transition, I can quickly move to that part using this top timeline. And then I can adjust the details of the clips here in the lower timeline. And so the idea here is that you can quickly move from one side of the world to the other without having to zoom in and out a whole bunch, because that does take some time to zoom in and out and kind of get the right view for what you're working on. The other thing you might notice is these little indicators here, where if we have a clip, let's just open a clip like this, we have this little animation here that's kind of shooting little arrows down here. And we also have this green highlight. This is our edit indicator. And what that means is that if we use some of these edit buttons, which are very similar to the edit buttons you get over here in the edit page, but if we use one of these edit buttons, some of these have to do with a specific edit point. So for instance, this insert button, this smart insert, what it's going to do is look for the nearest edit point, which is going to be highlighted in green, and that's where it's going to insert the clip. Normally, on the edit page, if I were to be right over this title, and I were to insert this like this, that's going to throw that right in the middle of that clip, exactly where my playhead is, just like that. In the cut page, because it takes time to completely line this up exactly where you want it to be, it's just going to put this on the nearest edit point. So if I grab this right here and I say Smart Insert, that's going to put that right there in between those two clips. It's not going to put it exactly where the playhead is. If I have that playhead less than 50% through this clip, we're going to highlight this edit point, and that's where whatever clip I have selected is going to be inserted. So this is the kind of thing that can get you in trouble, but if you're aware of it and kind of the thinking behind why this is built this way, then it can actually be really helpful and speed you up. Sort of a similar thing with this edit point is with our transitions. There's these 3 buttons right here, and this will allow you to quickly select the type of transition that you want for this edit point. And so by default, it's a cut, but with one click, I can add a crossfade here. And so I could just go to the nearest edit point and go, okay, I want a crossfade here. I want one here. I want one here. And you can really easily just add these kind of things, and you can see how quickly you can go through and do stuff. And so there are a lot of cool things about just editing a normal project in the cut page. It's a little bit of a different feel. You have to get used to it, but for certain applications, it can really speed you up. Something like putting together a narrative film is maybe not something that I would do in the cut page. The cut page would be really great for a vlog or a news story where you're trying to, 1, move really fast and probably get it out as quickly as you can. And 2, you generally just have a bunch of clips one after another, and you don't have complicated sound design and, all kinds of different layers and stuff like that. It's just one clip after another. And so because that's kind of such a specific application, we're not going to spend lots and lots of time on the cut page. It's sort of a divisive page, honestly. Some people really like it, and some people don't see a point in having the cut page at all. Me, I use this for some things. It's nice for quickly putting a whole bunch of clips down into the timeline and creating kind of a rough edit, but I'll generally move over to the edit page to kind of refine my edits and make sure that my audio tracks are good and everything like that. Because the cut page, while there are audio tracks, kind of get rid of our extra tracks here, move my camera here, I can click on this button right here and expand those tracks a little bit, and I can see the audio a little bit better. And I can hold Alt and adjust just the audio like this. And so it's certainly doable, but because of the way the cut page is made, where you don't really have a normal selection tool, you only have the trim tools, it can sort of feel awkward, and you can kind of trim your audio when you don't really mean to sometimes. And it's a little bit awkward sometimes. And so generally, if you're going to do something quick where you have your audio and your video in the same clips, and you're just going to put one right after another, that's what I would use the cut page for. And like I said, it kind of comes down to personal preference. You might find that you really like the way the cut page does things and not having to zoom in or out. And you might find that cutting your videos together in the cut page is really enjoyable. However, especially if you're coming from a different editor like Premiere or something like that, the edit page is going to feel a lot more familiar. Now, the one thing that's really, really great about the cut page is, surprisingly, it's multicam editing. The way it handles multicam is actually really interesting. If you want to follow along, you can go to the master bin right here and open cut. And we have some footage that we're going to cut together on the cut page. Let's make a new timeline. I'll just right click and say create new timeline like this. And we'll say cut page multicam like that. And here we have several different shots of the same production meeting. And so we have 2 kind of medium shot cameras, we have 1 overhead camera, and we have a wide camera. So this is a 4-camera multicam shoot. We also have our audio. This is just an example with multiple cameras, but if you have a multi-camera shoot for, say, a cooking video or a live event or something, this is all going to work the same way. When we have all of these different cameras that happen at the same time, what we can do is we can sync them up with each other and then cut from one camera to the other just to get a kind of a different angle. And there are ways to do this in the edit page. For instance, I can open up this cut page multicam and I can start bringing some of these cameras in here, and I can sync these up with each other just by kind of lining up these audio waveforms. And I could cut from one camera to the other. And make my edit that way, just by kind of stacking these cameras and kind of turning one layer off and kind of trimming it and that kind of thing to cut in between the cameras. But in the edit page, I could also select all of these, right click, and say new multicam clip using selected clips. I'll just uncheck move source clips to original clips bin and hit create. And so there are ways to kind of sync these up and then select the different cameras and kind of cut in between them on the edit page. But it is kind of a pain to set that up. It's a little bit tricky. Let me know in the comments if you want a video on setting up multicam in the edit page. But in the cut page, it kind of simplifies this in that we can select all of these clips and we can click this button right here, which is the sync button. I can select those all and I can sync these by audio and then hit auto sync. And that will sync up all of my clips on this kind of preview timeline. And then we can hit save sync. And what that's going to do is give us a little blue indicator on each of these clips to show that it syncs with some other clip. Once we have that done, we've kind of tagged all of those clips to say, hey, these sync with each other, and here's exactly the time that they should sync with. Once we have that, we can drag any of these clips. Let's just drag this wide clip in. We can drag any of these clips in and just kind of go through it, sort of like the anchor method, like we were talking about. We just have this wide shot and we can look around for something interesting happening. We have Dan reaching for some candy. That's something interesting right here. And so what we can do is go up to our sync bin, and this is going to show live the clips that sync up with this place in our timeline. So right here, when he starts to reach, we can see all of our different angles for what we want. I can hit 3, and that's going to bring up a clip and set an in and out to start right there. I can just drag this down like this, and then it's going to be a perfect cut from one shot to another. Let's go back to our timeline viewer here. So here's one shot. There we go. We can cut back, trim this just like that. And so it's sort of like a hybrid of a multicam and kind of the traditional way of stacking a bunch of clips together. And so what's great about something like this is we can just cut to whatever we think is interesting from this wide shot. And so Sam's talking right here. Again, we can just open up the sync bin. Let's use the shot of Sam talking here. Great. And we can either drag it down or we can use our edit buttons like this place on top. And that's going to put that exactly where it's supposed to be. Switch back to our timeline here. We have him talking. Great. So this is a nice way to be able to use multiple cameras without having to set up a multicam and play through and switch your cameras in real time. You can kind of just scrub through and find the interesting parts. So there's Sam talking again, sync bin. Let's switch to Sam talking. Put that in as a place on top. And now we can cut to Sam as he's talking. Isn't that great? And so if you're doing a lot of multicam stuff, especially if it's something like a live event where you're mostly on a wide shot and then you just want to cut to the interesting parts, this is a really nice way to handle that. There are a lot more features in the cut page, things that we just don't have time to get into. This is kind of the main stuff. But if you're looking to move a lot faster and you're kind of working on a deadline, the cut page might be something to really look into and learn a little bit more about, especially if you're doing these certain kinds of multicam edits. This can be really helpful. But a lot of the basics here are pretty much like the edit page. We're still putting clips together into a timeline. We're cutting them, we're trimming them, we're moving things around, we're adjusting the order, and we're building our story here on the timeline. This timeline, whatever we make for our video, this is going to be the bones of our video. It's the main place where all of the clips live, and then everything else that we do in Fusion, Color, and Fairlight are going to be based on this timeline right here. So after you organize your media, you can switch to the edit page or the cut page, depending on what you feel like doing. And you place your clips here on the timeline to create a story. Once you're happy with the story, then you can move on and get fancier with the Fusion, Color, and Fairlight pages, which we're going to dive into next. So let's take a step back and talk about some kind of general workflow here. When you're making a video of some kind, you will record stuff or get footage from a client or online or whatever. And the very first thing that you have to do is manage your media. So it's get it organized, make sure it's renamed if you're going to rename it, put it in folders, tag it, get familiar with it, that kind of thing. From there, it's building a story, which is the strict definition of editing. A lot of people, when they say editing, they pretty much mean this entire workflow. But strictly speaking, editing is adjusting clips in a timeline. So it's actually creating what your movie is going to be. Once you have that, then you can move on to get a little bit fancier and a little bit more detailed. For most videos, that would include things like visual effects, whether it's doing simple things like replacing a screen on a TV digitally, or cloning out a car that's driving through the background of your medieval epic movie, or adding lightsabers and explosions and portals and things like that. That's all visual effects. It would be adding graphics, things like titles and credits and little pop-up icons and things like that. And then generally you'll work on color correction, color grading, making sure that your colors look good, working on your audio, making sure your audio sounds good. Things are loud enough, but not too loud. Things sound like they belong there. Things that should make noise actually make noise. And then finally, we get into rendering, which is saving out your video in a format that other people can watch. It's making a video file and uploading it to YouTube or giving it to your client, putting it on a website, that kind of thing. So this is the whole workflow from start to finish on making a video. And it kind of flows in this general order. And this is really why the buttons at the bottom of the Resolve interface, the pages, are in this order. Because we start with media, then we do our editing, then we do our effects and our graphics in Fusion, we do our color grading in Color, we do our audio mixing in Fairlight, and then we render it out. So for the rest of this video, we're going to get fancy. We're going to do the fancy stuff, starting out with Fusion here in a minute. So I can do my graphics, effects, color, and audio right here in Resolve. And all of these different apps, which are actually just pages in Resolve, all share the same timeline. And it's instantly available to do our really detailed, fancy stuff in those pages. You build your story here on the edit page, and the other pages let you make it even better. So let's dive into Fusion. Go ahead and do this with me. Go over to your media pool in the edit page and open the Fusion bin. So you should have VFX alien plate, house exterior ship plate, etc. Right click anywhere in there and say timelines, create new timeline. And we're just going to call this Fusion timeline. And we'll hit create. You don't have to make a new timeline to work in Fusion. We're just doing this because this is going to kind of be the Fusion demo thing. But take all of these clips. I'll just shift select those and just drag those into the timeline like this. So we have 4 main clips here. We have a little puppet, we have a house, we have the top of the spaceship, and we have a wide shot with kids riding their bikes across this mountain vista. These are the shots that we're going to use to kind of learn a little bit more about Fusion. So make sure that you have these shots added to a new timeline. And we're going to do one special thing. We're going to take this VFX alien plate. We're going to put this up on the second video track and put this right over our VFX ship plate like that. And then we'll just drag this down. So we should have our VFX house exterior, our alien plate, and our ship plate stacked, and our wide shot like this. Let's just open up our wide shot in Fusion. The way that we do that is we're just over it here on the edit page, and then we go down and just click on the Fusion page. That's going to open up this clip here in Fusion. And now we're ready to work with this clip right on our timeline. Now, if you've never used Fusion before, you're probably already a little bit, oh gosh, what is this? This looks completely different than the edit page. What the heck are these things? There's no way I'm ever going to understand this. And believe me, I get it. Fusion can be really intimidating because it's a very different interface than a lot of other apps. The edit page at least sort of looks like something you're familiar with. You know, there's kind of like layers, there's a timeline, you know, you've scrubbed through videos on YouTube. It's sort of familiar, so you can kind of pick it up. But the Fusion page, you're like, what? Why are there little boxes? Don't worry, I'm going to explain everything and move really slow. And pretty soon you're going to say, okay, that's pretty cool. So let's start with the easy stuff. Up here, we have our familiar buttons that open and close panels. And we have the inspector. Look at that. Remember, the inspector is going to show properties of whatever we have selected. More on that in a little bit. Over here, we can open up our media pool, which is exactly how it's been in the other pages. And also our effects, which is very similar as well. We have a list of effects that we can drag down and apply to things. We have a viewer right here. And we have a viewer over here. And these, for now, let's just say these work pretty much like the viewers in the edit page, where on the left, you can open up a clip and kind of preview it. And on the right, this is what the person who watches your video is going to see. By default, it works in a similar way on the Fusion page. There's a viewer over here where we're going to use to pick up little pieces and look at them. And on the right, this is what the person who watches our movie is actually going to see. Down below here, we have sort of a little bit of a different style of a timeline but it still works. It has a playhead, which is this little red line. And you can drag it back and forth. We have our playback controls, so we can play this, stop it, go backwards. J, K, and L still work, and you can play this back and forth. Really, the only big difference here is that we're looking at one clip. We're not looking at our entire timeline. We're just looking at one clip from our timeline. And so by default, we'll have this loop. And so this will play all the way through and then loop back to the beginning and play again. Here we have our current frame that we're on. And as we scrub, this kind of changes. We also have our beginning and end frames for our composition. And below that, we have a panel, which we call our toolbar. Now, this is a little bit different than our toolbar in the edit page, where when you click a tool, it kind of changes how your mouse reacts to things. This toolbar actually creates tools down here in the nodes. Now, if you don't know what that means yet, that's okay. Basically, here's how it works. You grab an icon and you drag it down here and it will make a little box. Okay? Don't worry about that. Below our toolbar, we have our nodes. This is where the action happens in Fusion. Fusion is all about the nodes. What the heck are nodes? Basically, it's a flowchart of little boxes that you run images through to create whatever you want to make. Now, I know that sounds really generic and doesn't really explain it. So I want to back up for just a minute. Fusion is a compositing tool. Now, what the heck is compositing? Compositing, real strictly speaking, is basically putting images over other images. It's combining elements. So you can think of this kind of like what you would typically use Photoshop for, right? If we're going to make an image with some mountains and a cow and a saucer abducting the cow, we would have different elements here. We would have possibly a shot that looks like this, and then we would add this saucer digitally. Or maybe we just have a shot of some mountains and we put in the cow digitally and we put in the saucer, and then we maybe add a little bit of fancy clouds to the sky. It's putting all of these pieces together to make a really cool visual thing. And something like this, where you're combining photos and you want to make it look real, that's something that we would call like visual effects. Whereas if you're making a title, you know, with 3D text that comes in and flashes, that would be more like a graphic. But visual effects and graphics are Fusion's bread and butter. That's what Fusion does. So if you're wanting to change an image so that it looks different and has different elements in it than it did when you shot it, you're probably going to be compositing in some way. Just like you would take a photo and clone out your weird uncle because you don't want him in the family picture, you can do that kind of thing with video. And Fusion is the place to do it in Resolve. If you've heard of After Effects, Fusion is kind of like Blackmagic's answer to After Effects inside of Resolve. It can do pretty much all the same stuff. So the reason we might take a shot like this into Fusion is if we want to change something about it. Let's just get rid of these nodes for a minute because they're scary. Maybe we want to erase one of these people riding their bike. Maybe we want to add crazy clouds to the sky. Maybe we want to add a flying saucer. Maybe we want to duplicate some trees and fill in these trees a little more. Anything that has to do with kind of changing the actual pixels of the image, that's stuff we would use Fusion for. In our other shots, if we want to make this image look like it was shot at night, we could do a lot of that probably in the color page, but we can do some fancy things in the Fusion page as well, like brighten up these windows or replace them with different windows that have lights in them. We could add a big statue here. Really, the thing that I love about Fusion is that there are no limits to what you can do. In a little bit, one thing that we're going to do in Fusion is take this image and kind of cut a hole in it and then put our little alien guy into the hole of the image so it looks like he's hanging out in this seat, smiling and happy. That's the kind of stuff that you can do in Fusion. So let's go back to our wide shot here. And to make all these kind of things happen, we are going to use nodes. So what is a node? A node is a little box in the Fusion interface that does one job. And what we do is we link all of these boxes together to do a bunch of fancy stuff to our image. So this is basically what a node looks like. The node has one job and it's generally called whatever its job is. So this node's job is to blur things. And there are a couple of different inputs on each node. This is where you would attach other nodes. And the colors of the inputs matter a lot. Generally, most nodes, you would attach a node to a yellow input. but there are also green and blue and other inputs that we'll talk about in a little bit. Once the node does its job, for instance, if you hook up an image to this yellow input, it's going to take that image and blur it. And then you can connect this node to other nodes by taking this little white square and connecting that to the next node. After the image runs through this node, it's going to change the image. And so this image that I connect to the next node is going to be a blurry image because it's already gone through this node. If this is already confusing, that's okay. All you really have to know is that a node is a box with one job. A lot of the students that we work with that are learning Fusion find it's a lot easier to think about nodes like a flow chart. And when you're just starting out, it helps to think of a flow chart for something fun. Like for instance, a recipe. A recipe is nice because there are a series of steps. So if you were going to write out a recipe for lemonade, let's say, number 1 might be get lemons. Step 2 might be squeeze them. Squeeze the juice. 3 would be add the juice to water. 4 would be add sugar. 5 might be mix. And so we can kind of split what we want to do into steps. And we can do this like a flow chart, like get lemons, squeeze juice, add juice to water, add sugar, mix. And these are going to happen in a certain order. And they're going to flow from one to the other. This is pretty much how nodes work in Fusion. So if we were going to make a node chart for getting lemonade, it might look something like this. The difference is that Fusion, you have to tell Fusion everything. It's kind of like you need to give it really specific instructions on exactly what you want it to do because it can't read your mind. So for instance, we have a node here called get lemons. Okay, so I have some lemons. Squeeze the juice. Okay, so I'm squeezing it. Then I add the juice to the water. What water? Where's the water? This is the first time I've ever heard about water. And so what we really need to do is make another node that says get water. So we get lemons and we get water. We squeeze the juice for the lemons and we add the juice to the water. So we need to actually combine these two things. So both of those things happen. We get juice and we get water. Then we need sugar. What sugar? Well, we need to get some sugar. We need to add those, right? So we're mixing two things together. So this is more of a node graph that you would see in Fusion. You get some lemons and you change those lemons by squeezing them. You get some water and you combine it with that squeezed juice. You get this watery juice, you get some sugar and you add those together. Then you stir it, you mix it up. And at the end, you have lemonade. One of the first things I ask our students to do when they're learning Fusion is to make a flow chart for a recipe that they like. So here is a flow chart from one of our students named Ryan that I think is especially great for how to make ramen noodles. And we'll take a look at this and then we're going to come back to it in a little bit because I want to show you something really cool about this. But it's the idea of doing one step at a time. We get a pot, we get 20 ounces of water. We add the water to the pot. We boil the water. We get noodles. We add the noodles to the boiling water for 5 minutes. We drain the water from the pot. We get sauce. We add the sauce to the noodles. We stir fry for 30 seconds. We get flakes. We add the flakes to the noodles. We stir it all up and we serve it, right? So it's thinking about things in steps. That's what's really, really important here. If you can get your mind to start thinking in these little steps, nodes are going to be easy. Let's jump into Fusion and take a look at this.